In this video, we're going to look at the actual workbook while covering various topic areas ranging from a few very simple Excel screen setup steps you'll need to do before using it on your laptop or PC, to how to easily navigate screen and mixed model views within the application, to functionality that has been built into the tool to enable its direct use in live consultative presentations. Note that this video has been topically timestamped so you can easily find your way to only a specific subject or two of interest without having to go through it all at one time. There's an alternative 8.5 minute video that focuses on miXCELerator's unique, and I think game-changing, approach to third-party mixed model analysis and archiving that, in addition to providing all traditional industry metrics and learnings, uniquely quantifies both the return on marketing investment and the ongoing returns on marketing mix modeling investments. So here we'll be focusing more on demo views of the features and functionalities of the tool itself. But first, let's very quickly reground ourselves in miXCELerator's reason for being. By way of review, miXCELerator is not a new model. It is a tool that quickly and simply provides deeply experience-guided automated analysis of third-party model output, re-energized by inclusion of a proprietary marketing ROI change due to analysis that quantifies the degree of bottom-line impact resulting from converting prior mixed model insights into action. It does all this while archiving for easy retrieval both granular and big picture learnings from up to 100 models sourced from any combination of third-party mixed modeling vendors, and delivers it in the form of a presentation-ready, macro-free workbook that remains in users' permanent physical possession. It's not tenuously located on a cloud that tethers users to permanent allegiance to any single modeling vendor. With all that said, it's now time to dive into the workbook itself and explore various topics ranging from how to configure it to fit your specific Excel screen, to how to navigate and drill down within the tool, to how to best use it within the context of live presentations. This video will start with the simple process of Excel screen configuration, but if you prefer to jump ahead to a specific topic or two, there's timestamps on this page which should efficiently get you where you want to go. The first thing you're going to want to do is configure your Excel screen to work with miXCELerator. So let's take a quick look at how that gets done. Pretty easy stuff. Okay, so when you receive your workbook, the very first thing you're going to absolutely need to do is make a few adjustments to your view to make sure that the screen is being properly filled by the material in the workbook. Don't be nervous. It's a very easy process, and it's something that you'll need to make probably need to make some little adjustments on each individual tab. And the reason for this is everybody's laptop and PC has probably a slightly different screen configuration, screen sizes and layouts. So you just, because of this, you just need to make a couple little simple adjustments. So the very first thing you're going to absolutely have to do is get your screen into full screen mode within Excel. And the reason for this is you don't need this big this big window of applications on the very top of Excel exposed to you, because they're going to be of no value once you're in the tool, and it's just going to unnecessarily eat up space. So the way to do that is to move forward to the right and then shift yourself into full screen mode. So now we're looking at, we're having things laid out without all that unnecessary clutter and noise at the top of the screen. Within the executive top line, this is the way it looks on my screen, properly configured, and you're going to want to match yours to look something like this, where there's a black frame going entirely around the screen. So how do you do that? You go up You open up your ribbons on the top, you go into the view mode, and then you go into zoom. And there you can customize your zoom larger or smaller until you can get this framed out properly. For me, given my screen configurations, a 98% custom zoom was what works, but you can type in any number you want until you get it to look right. And this is in the executive Topline screen. Now the zoom you'll have in your other tabs will be slightly different, and you don't have to have the same zoom level in each tab. Okay, so now let's move into the Central Learning Hub. The way you configure things in the Central Learning Hub is if you look at column B and go way down here to cell 40 or cell 43 in column B, if you look, there's a little thin black line at the bottom of the border of that cell. You're going to want to adjust your zoom to get this as low, but still slightly visible, but as low to the bottom of your screen as possible. For me, the zoom to get that accomplished within Central Learning Hub was at 85% custom zoom. Okay, within tactical drill downs, what we have here are large data tables, and they're all configured the same in terms of column lists. You just want to make sure that your column AE, the far right-hand side, is just barely visible on your screen. For me, the zoom to make that happen was a custom zoom of a 60. Whatever works on your machine, put that in until you can get this filled in properly. And finally, within the cross-model review tab, very similar concept where you want to be able to get this perfectly centered. And the way you do that is you go to column N and just make sure that the farthest most right line here at this side at the end of at the right hand side of column M is as close to the end of the screen as possible. For me, that zoom level is a custom zoom of 78. So once you've done these adjustments within each screen, you'll be able to quickly advance from visual to visual and have everything remain centered each time, and you'll be in a good shape and ready to roll. Okay, easy enough. Once you have this set up, I think you're in good shape. Let's get rolling. Now let's cover off on how to advance from topic to topic within the various tabs. Okay, now what we're going to do is briefly cover off on how you advance from screen to screen and topic to topic within the various tabs of the tool. The executive top line, this is pretty much a non-issue because it's a single screen tab. So we'll put that off to the side for now. Within the Central Learning Hub, there are multiple screens telling each telling a different step and process in the ROI enhancement storyline. And you'll always be able to see where you are in any of these given, let's call them chapters, because that particular segment will be colorized. And in this particular case, we're looking at the very first thing we talk about, which is base consumer demand, trying to get an understanding of how much leverage do we have in terms of consumer interest in the product our marketing is trying to grow. So that's the very first topic that's covered off on. From that, the storyline proceeds to say, okay, now that we know whether there's a increasing or decreasing demand for the product, are we spending more or less in terms of marketing dollars to leverage that demand? Because once we understand that, we can progress on to taking a look at how much incrementality our marketing generated and whether that rate of incrementality growth is better or worse than one might have expected, given the strength of the base demand of the business and how much money we're putting against growing it. So that's the general start of the storyline that plays out here. How do you advance from one topic to topic? Very simple process. we have this bar off to the right where you can just grab this little tab and drag it up and down in a normal Excel application. And in theory, you could do that in this tool as well, but that's really not the best way to move around. The best way is to go beneath this dark tab and just click somewhere in the bar, and it will automatically advance you from screen to screen. And you'll notice not everything is filled out here because there's reveals that are built into here that you can use. And I don't have it all revealed at this point, just for simplicity's sake. So that's how you move around from screen to screen within the Central Learning Hub. Now moving on to tactical drill downs. It's a different process. Here we have just detailed data tables that can be shown in some aggregate form, or we can have immense granularity, but you can switch your view of the data in a logical, ordered, structured way just by moving through this drop-down pick list. Within the cross model review tab, very similar concept to what we actually saw in the Central Learning Hub, except the only difference is, whereas the Central Learning Hub progressed from top to bottom, the cross-model review progresses from left to right. So in this case, we have this bar that you can drag from left to right if you wanted, but the ideal way is actually to not drag that bar, but just go beneath the dark color tab and just click, and it'll move you from topic to topic and keep everything nicely centered for you. Okay, you get that simple process down and you are ready to roll. miXCELerator can accommodate up to 100 separate marketing mix models. So let's take a look at how you can, at any point in the application, switch from one model to another. So the workbook sitting in front of you could have one model loaded into it. It could have 100 models loaded into it, or anywhere in between. And at any point in going through the tool and looking at the stories that's being told, you may have an interest in seeing, geez, I wonder what this image would look like for a different brand in my data set, or a different geography, or maybe for the same brand but a few years earlier, depending on how you've structured your load in of models into the tool. So how do you change from model to model? Well, that's very easy. We'll start in the executive top line. That's the very first screen in the or tab in the workbook. You select your model of interest by going up to the very top, and there's a pick list in the top left-hand corner. And here you can pick from any individual model. And here we've got brand X fiscal 23 loaded. Say we want to see what that looks like for this decline mitigation model. You can just keep selecting model to model. Once you make a selection within this particular screen, the executive top line, what you select here will carry over into the Central Learning Hub and Tactical Drill Downs tab. Cross Model Review tab always shows the results for all the models, so you're not selecting individual models here. Everything's already loaded in, top line information across all models. So you've made a selection, and now this carries into your Central Learning Hub and your Tactical Drill Downs. So we've selected brand X fiscal year 23 USA. We go into our Central Learning Hub, and we're currently looking at brand X fiscal year 23 USA, because that's what we selected in the executive top line. So we want to override that and see what this looks like for a different model. Same idea. In the upper left-hand corner, there's going to be a drop-down pick list, all 100 models available to you, and you can switch and see what any particular screen looks like for any particular model. Once you make an override in this screen, it carries over to what you would see in the executive top line. There's a little note here that says, okay, now we're looking at decline mitigation. That was different than what we initially selected. And there's a little yellow note with yellow text saying, this was an override that was done in one of the following tabs. So if you want to get back to the point where you can modify things here, you're going to have to clear out those other overrides. Okay, so we selected decline mitigation here. So now this applies across all the tabs, including what you see in the tactical drill down, decline mitigation. Decline mitigation. Say you're in the tactical drill down and you want to override again and look at something different. You have the same pick list and you can switch and bounce to any different model, and it will change the results for that model and override what we had in these preceding tabs. So now they're all the same. So at any point in time, depending on what kind of overrides and initial selections you put in, every tab will be looking at the same model at any given point in time. If you want to get to the point where you can modify the models being selected either in the central learning hub or the executive top line, you need to get rid of any overrides that took place farther in the tabs farther to the right. So the way you do that is you just go up to this revise selection box, click into it, and then on your keyboard just hit delete, and that goes away. So now what we're doing is looking at what was overridden within the context of the central learning hub. You want to get rid of that. You can go into that tab, hit delete, clears that out, and now we're back to what you initially had selected for your model within the executive top line. Okay, so that's how easy it is to bounce from model to model, and hopefully that's simple enough. Now let's take a quick look at how you can look at granular detail dynamically within the Central Learning Hub, and then within the Tactical Drill Downs tab, how you can actually roll up to higher levels of aggregation. Okay, so what we have in our hands now is a tool that has up to 100 models, each model containing up to 100 marketing variables. And for each marketing variable, there's multiple metrics and time periods. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of observations to sort through and make sense of. So one of the things we need to be able to do is be able to provide very easy access to any individual bit of granularity that somebody might want to see, and then show it in a way that's organized and makes sense and helps tell a story in terms of what's going on from an overall marketing ROI perspective. So we're gonna kind of cover off on that, and we're also going to cover off on the fact that we don't want to spend all our time kind of rooting around at the most granular levels of the data. At some points, we want to be able to roll things up to higher levels. So I'm going to take a few minutes now and show you within a couple of these tabs how you can do those things. So starting within the Central Learning Hub, the Central Learning Hub, by and large, is what you see is what you get type of part of the application, where there's not a lot of opportunity to dynamically root around in the data. There's one exception to that, though. That's in the tactic level performance and ROI change contributions section, where we have this thumbnail that allows you to see everything you're going to want to know about any individual tactic in the model you have pulled up at that moment. So what we have is in the upper left-hand quadrant for the tactic, in this case, it's a consumer promotion variable. We have the ROI change due tos. So how much of a contribution to total ROI change did this tactic have? How much of that change was a function of budget reallocation moves that were made versus changes in cost per execution and impact per execution? So that's in the upper left-hand quadrant. But we see for this particular variable, it had a negative impact on overall marketing ROI And that was really entirely a function of what was going on in terms of the net of increasing cost and decreasing effectiveness. If you want to see the details surrounding that, that's in the lower left-hand quadrant where we have for that variable its spend, its redemptions, its return on investment, its effectiveness, and its cost per execution. And so what we see is a huge increase in cost per execution, a slight decline in impact per execution, netting to a very significant ROI drop. Over on this side, we just compare this particular tactic's performance versus the average across all tactics in the marketing mix, and also relate that against how much is spent. So you can see are the moves we're making from a budget allocation perspective making sense given how well this tactic is performing. So that's what this thumbnail does, and you're allowed to able to go in and see it for any one of the variables that you have in your data set. So in this particular case, we have 100 different variables in the marketing mix model. So then the question is, how can you navigate through this and figure out where you might want to start looking? The tool helps you a little bit with that by showing the top 5 most positive tactics in terms of our overall ROI contribution, and the 5 most negative factors. So if we want to just very quickly look at the most negative, it was television ad E, SKU2. We can pull that up, scroll down to television ad E, SKU2. So what went on there? Very negative, minus 6% impact on 6.1% impact on overall marketing ROI. How'd that come to pass? Well, it generated a 20-cent ROI and compared to an average ROI of 217. So it was a very poor performer, yet we spent almost $9 million on it. It was 7.3% of our overall marketing budget. So you can very quickly pull up for any one of the tactics and any one of the models. You could easily just switch to a different model and pull up any tactic within any model and see the overall story unfold for that tactic and all the key metrics in an organized way that makes sense, not only in terms of understanding that tactic's isolated performance, but also its impact and contribution to the overall change in marketing performance. So that's within the Central Learning Hub. Within the tactical drill downs tab, we start at a very granular level. So we've just been looking at a TV ad in the Central Learning Hub. Now that we're in tactical drill downs, you can do normal Excel things, like if we wanted to just look at not everything not every tactic in the mix, but let's only look at TV. We can do a filter on that and just look at the various TV tactics. Or what if you want to look at total TV? There's a box up here that lets you look at aggregation level. So let's say we want to look at total TV. That's a marketing lever, and now we can see our total TV, our total trade, our email, our digital, everything summed up. The ability to do these aggregations are entirely a function of how the granular tactical level naming conventions were organized. So in this case, we see that we have audio ad, which is a form of advertising. It had a certain messaging to it, which was message A, and it was featuring a certain SKU. So what the tool will automatically do is look for blanks, dashes, underscores, colons, semicolons, and anything that within the naming convention, and then split that into subgroups that you can then total up and run aggregations on. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, and we'll move on to some other topics. At some point, you may very well want to use this application to give a live presentation. Well, there's some features built into it to help with that process, so let's take a look at how that works within the text of the executive Topline tab. When designing this application, I wanted it to be able to do more than perform automated analysis and archiving of large volumes of marketing mix modeling output. I also wanted it to be able to be functional for the purposes of performing a live presentation, which you might very well want to do from time to time. So when you're dealing with data sets of this magnitude, to present it in an understandable way, it's really important to be able to manage the pace and the flow and this order in which information is being released. Otherwise, it's very easy for people to get lost in a flood of numbers. So there's been a functionality built into this tool, both in the executive Topline and the central learning hub, to accomplish that task. We're looking on this screen at the executive Topline. And on the left-hand side of the screen in white, you see some very faint gray text: hide, 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 and hide. And when these are drop-down boxes, and when hide is selected, what that means is there's a block of information off to the right that has been hidden. So you can release it when you're ready to put that information out in front of the audience. And then you can, of course, release the next piece and the next piece. So you're slowly pacing an ordered and structured flow of knowledge to the people that are viewing. So let's reveal the first piece of information. So we hit reveal, and now we have a bullet point, and we have a table with a little bit of charting. So what are we looking here is the very first thing we're going to talk about in the executive Topline. We're going to look at the overall revenue trend, which was down 1.4%, and understand what role base consumer demand versus overall marketing incremental, both the funded and unfunded part of marketing, what roles did they play in driving our overall revenue trend? And in this particular case, we see a very weak base business down almost 5.2%. But despite having a weak base, we were able to generate some offsetting growth from marketing activity. Now that we don't know, that could have just been done because we poured enormous sums of money into marketing, or it could have been done due to some very effective marketing. We don't know that yet. All we know is our base business was soft, but we were able to partially offset that through some marketing success. So that's the first thing that we're establishing in this executive Topline. Now, when I revealed this, you notice a little gray box pop up here. And this is an opportunity, if we want, before moving on to the next point, to dim this so the data remains there, but it's not going to be as much of a visual distraction. Some people like to do this type of thing. I personally do, but some people may choose to keep that all revealed and colorized when they go on to make the next point. So for now, let's just keep that revealed and colorized. So now I'll go down to the next box that says hide, and I'll reveal that, and we move on to the next topic. We're looking at the base revenue, which is what we already saw up there, but we're looking at marketing spend. So we know we had a contracting base business, and look, our marketing was down as well. We spent less money on marketing activity. So these two things in particular, you add that together: a contracting consumer interest in the product and spending less to promote it, would suggest that we would probably expect to see declining incremental from the marketing activity because we're spending less against a declining base. But somehow or another, we were able to generate a 19.6% growth rate in terms of our incrementality. So something really good happened from a marketing effectiveness perspective because we generated more incremental sales with less money, even though consumer interest in the product was softening. So that's setting the stage for getting into this idea of ROI change due to how much did our return on investment for marketing activity change as a function of all of these things. So when I hit the reveal here, another little gray box appeared, and this allows us to gray out everything on the top, should we so choose, before we move in to the discussion of ROI change and ROI change drivers. So let's dim that out for now. So now I'm going to reveal the next piece of information and say, okay, well, we saw something really good was happening from a marketing perspective. What did that net out to? Well, that netted out to our funded marketing ROI growing from $2.60 to $3.52, or a 35% improvement. So really good stuff happening. Why was that the case? Hit reveal. Well, it was almost entirely I shouldn't say almost, it was entirely a function of smart things we did from a budget reallocation perspective. If we looked at just our impact per execution and our cost per execution, those two factors alone would have driven our overall marketing ROI down by 3.8%. But we did some really smart things in terms of how we move money around, moving money from weaker performing tactics to stronger performing tactics, learning from what we've done in prior mixed model analyses, and that offset a declining base business and spending less money. We're still able to generate growth because of aggressive use of what we learned from prior mixed modeling activities. And then if you wanted to explore this budget reallocation just a little bit on this executive top line, there's an option to reveal, and it'll show a couple of tactics where you did some, in green where you did something that was very positive, and red where you did something that was less positive. So that's the nature of how this reveal process works within the context of the executive top line. And I will put it all in its full visuals at this point. And remember, there's not just one model in here, so you can go and you can switch and see how this would have looked for any one of up to 100 different models within the data set. And in some cases, the story might be very different. In this particular case, we had a very strong base business with more money being spent, but we generated far less incrementality than we would have expected based on how strong the business was and how much we were spending. Where was the problems there? And again, how we chose to allocate our money was a large part of that problem. So that's how the story plays out within the context of the executive top line, and how you can release that information a little bit at a time and do some things to minimize the degree of visual distraction by doing some dimming and so forth. So hopefully that whole concept makes sense, as does the storyline that's being told within this segment of the tool. The bulk of live presentations will take place within the Central Learning Hub, and there's been some very important features built in to aid in that process. So let's take a look. In the Central Learning Hub, there's a similar set of features to what you saw in the executive top line with respect to the ability to conceal and reveal chunks of information in a logical sequence and at a pace that makes the most sense for telling the ROI enhancement story you want to tell, and doing it in a way where you won't ever overwhelm people with exposing them to too much information, too many numbers, too fast. So I'm going to take you through how that works, these features work within the context of the Central Learning Hub, as well as point out a couple other storytelling features that have been built into this particular tab. I'm going to focus entirely on this one screen of the Central Learning Hub for this presentation. But rest assured that as we progress through every one of the 13 chapters in this story, that the same set of features for revealing and concealing will be present. The same set of features with respect to coaching tips and bullet point modification exists throughout the entirety of this tab. Okay, so we're in the first chapter of the story, base consumer demand leverage. The first thing I'd recommend you do is acclimate yourself to why is this the first chapter? What's the role of this particular slide in setting up the overall story we're trying to tell? And each one of these screens, there's going to be a little question mark up here on the left, and that's a drop down that allows you to pull up some additional perspectives to help you think through the nature of this slide, what its role is, and how you might want to talk about it. So in this particular case, what we're talking about is the reality that bigger brands will generate more incrementality per impression delivered than smaller brands will. So understanding whether the base consumer demand for your brand is growing or declining is fundamental. So the first thing you want to understand, because it gives you a sense for, are your marketing dollars having to work harder in the marketplace than they did a year ago? Or are things getting a little bit easier because your brand and consumers are becoming more interested? So as you put dollars out, they're likely to generate more just because there's more just innate interest in the product to begin with. So pulling these little boxes of coaching tips up gives you some perspective on how to think through the role of a particular slide in the storyline. Some cases there might be an anecdotal example you might want to throw out there, and you can kind of absorb that, think it through, and once you're comfortable, you can hide it away, and it won't be cluttering up the screen as you take your viewers through it. So in terms of revealing information, there's a couple options. If you look at this little gray box up here, it's currently set to intro view. So we have a lot of things, hidden at this point. There's an option to reveal the entirety of what's on this slide by hitting the reveal up here. Or alternatively, you can go below reveal and there's a blank area. You can hit that, and now a couple boxes become apparent that you can use to piecemeal your reveal and show just a little bit at a time. Again, this functionality, as well as the coaching tips, is present for each one of these chapters in the storyline that you progress through. The last thing I want to talk about is, say there's a scenario where you look at this slide and you're thinking, you know what, I want to make a clip of this, put it into a Word document and send it along as part of some other analysis I'm doing. But I'd really like to change the bullet point. I want to say something other than what the automated bullet is saying. There is a capability of modifying these bullets. If you just scroll or just drag over to the right a little bit, there's a box here that you can just type in anything you want. It'll overwrite what's in there once there's something filling in this box. So I typed in XXX. Now you have a new bullet point. You could grab and make your picture of this, put it in your other document, and when you're done, just go back into that box, delete it, and it goes back to whatever the automated bullet point came up with. And you definitely want to get rid of it because you may want to pull up another model and take a look at what the story is, and you don't want a bullet point that was specific to model A showing up for model B. Okay, so again, as you progress through the entirety of the storyline, you'll have the same features in terms of the ability to do full reveals, partial reveals, get coaching tips on how to think about and talk to a particular slide, and edit bullet points. Finally, let's just quickly touch on a couple additional features that have been built into the Tactical Drill Downs tab. Okay, now I'm going to quickly go through several of the features built into the Tactical Drill Downs tab. Some of these are just standard Excel type features. Some are features built into this particular application. An application specific feature, like you can change your topics of the table through this drop down pick list. So here we're looking at spend and execution. We could switch to cost and incremental revenue per execution. We could look at revenue, due tos, and decomps. We can look at ROI and funded ROI change due tos, identify where we might want to move some money around from a spend mix perspective, and some halo analysis. So you can bounce from topic to topic just through this pick list. So that's a feature built into this tool. You could, of course, in any column, do Excel-based sorting from high to low, from low to high. You can do some filtering. And there's an option built into this tool that lets you change the dimensions upon which you'll filter. So here we have marketing levers selected in this filtering option. So if we wanted to look at all the individual television tactics that were in the tool, you can just go in and you do a filter on television. You get rid of everything else. Just pick your television, and now you've got all your television detail. Let's say it wasn't television you were interested in, or any of these marketing levers, but we have our various marketing activities split by which product in our product mix was being featured, and we wanted to look at only SKU1. Well, you can change your level of filtering and pick featured products, and now that switches and shows up as a filtering option. If you wanted to look at total television versus total consumer promotion, you can change your level of aggregation up here with this aggregation level box, and now we have our totals. One other feature that was built into this tool is a lot of times there will be a concern that maybe there was a tactic that didn't have a lot of money put behind it. So we got results from the model, but we want to take them maybe with a little bit more of a grain of salt because there wasn't as many observations and things. So a lot of times clients would like to put a spend threshold, or at least some sort of warning flag that there's going to be numbers here, but be a little bit cautious. I built that in where we have a default of $100,000. So any tactic that has less than $100,000 of spend, you see your spend here, and it gets flagged by this pink bar. I right now have it set to looking at average spend over the 3 time periods, and note that the average does not include if there's a period it wasn't available. It only averaged the 2 periods that it was available. Or you can take the most recent period and set your threshold based on that, or any of the other 2 time periods that are in the table. Or if you wanted to modify and change from $100,000, the default threshold, you can change that to some other number, and it will flag things differently. So I'll just delete that, stick it $100,000 for now. So those are the types of features that are built into this tool. One other thing that's hidden is, in some cases, clients have done a decomposition of the drivers of their base revenue trend. It's not a focal point of this particular application because we're really focusing on ROI change optimization. But if you want to have any detail that you may have had in your mix model with respect to base, you can just scroll to the right, and there will be some hidden decomposition of base revenue detail that you can look at. Okay, that's with all of that in your bag of tricks, you should be able to navigate your way through the Tactical Drill Downs tab pretty well. Okay, so that was the last video for now. If you want to go back to any of the earlier instructive videos, simply scroll down to the YouTube video description on your screen and click on the blue timestamp that'll take you to the topic that you're interested in.